This is quite the work of art, quite the masterpiece. Oh no, Walton, I think they're back. Yes, they're definitely back. Was I supposed to tell them the rest of the story today? Oh, this is awkward and uncomfortable. Okay, stand calmly, turn, and appear confident. It's wonderful to see you all today. I'm so happy that you are apparently back to hear more of the story today, which I forgot, but don't tell them that you forgot about it. But I think I just said that out loud. I did say it out loud. Okay. Now, yesterday, I know you met my husband, Mr. Brownbush, and he was telling you more of the story about Adoniram and that they were on their way to Burma on a ship. Now, people in India had told them, don't waste your life in Burma. The people don't want to hear the gospel, and the ruler there is really harsh, and he kills anybody that he doesn't like, so you probably shouldn't go to Burma. But Anne and Adoniram knew that even if it was dangerous, even if it meant sacrificing their own lives, that they needed to tell the people about Jesus. So on July 13th, 1813, they finally landed in Burma, and the people saw them getting off the ship and looked at them and said, "Ooh, you look very weird." Because they had never seen people with such white skin, and they hadn't seen people with such weird clothing and weird hairstyles. And so the people in the town came and gathered all around them as they got off the ship and were touching their clothes and touching Anne's hair. And Anne and Adoniram suddenly realized we are in a place that is very different than where we're from. And so they started to feel a little homesick. And so they had to pray and ask God to help them because they knew that God wanted them to be there in Burma to tell the people about Jesus. Now, the Judsons heard that there was one other missionary family that was there in Burma. And they found out that this missionary family was not too far from where they had just landed. And so they went to their house, and the people there, Felix Carey and his family, said, "We are so happy that you are here because we are actually leaving, and so you can take our place here." And Adoniram and Anne said, "Oh, we were hoping that you guys could partner with us and we could be missionaries together, but the Careys had to leave to go to another area." And so they were going to be by themselves, and they didn't know the language and they didn't know all of the customs. I mean, the Burmese people had a really weird thing about feet. They didn't want you to touch anything with your feet. You couldn't show people the bottom of your feet. You couldn't point at things with your feet. Who points with their feet? That's weird. I like my feet. My feet are very cute. My feet are cute. And so they didn't know any of the things, but Felix Carey decided that he was going to help them by getting them set up with somebody that was going to teach them how to speak the language and how to write the language. Now that is Burmese. And Burmese doesn't have any spaces between the words, and it doesn't have any commas, it doesn't have any periods. You don't know where a word ends or where a sentence ends. And so as you're reading it, you just kind of have to figure out, oh, wait, that was that word. And then, oh, wait, now it's starting a new word. Oh, wait, this is a new sentence now. And you just kind of have to figure it out. So it was a very tricky language, but they had to learn it because Adoniram needed to learn how to write it so that he could take the Bible and translate it into Burmese because the Burmese people didn't have Bibles. And that's not good. That's not good. So Adoniram went to go meet the viceroy, who was the ruler in that area who reported to the king. And the viceroy, well, he was not a very nice man. And oftentimes, if he didn't like somebody, he would just kill him. And so Adoniram and Anne prayed that God would protect Adoniram as he was going to meet the viceroy. Well, the viceroy ignored Adoniram when he went there to visit. And he didn't say anything to him. And Adoniram thought, does he even notice that I'm here? I think he does, because I look different than all of these other people, and so he has to notice. And so Adoniram left, and he didn't know, was that a good thing? Was that a bad thing? And he went back and told Anne. But Anne said, well, I have an idea. Why don't I go and try and meet the vicereine, who was the wife of the viceroy? Well, Adoniram said, but this is so dangerous. I don't want to put you in danger like that. And so he decided that he was going to pray. And he prayed, and he said, okay, Anne, go and meet the vicereine, and let's see if we can get some favor with her. Well, Anne went and met the vicereine, and the vicereine loved Anne, and they were such good friends immediately that the vicereine said, I want you to come back all the time to visit me. I love talking to you, and I want to be a really close friend with you. Anne was so excited that she came back and she told Adoniram everything that had happened, and they were praising God because they said, well, if the vicereine likes Anne, then maybe she'll like both of them, and then maybe the viceroy will like both of them, and that they won't bother them while they're trying to share the gospel with the people there. And maybe they'll even do stuff to help them. Well, the Judsons were getting better and better and better at the language at that time, until finally they were at the point where they were able to share the gospel with people. And they knew that the people needed it because they worshiped false gods. They worshiped Buddha and other weird statue things where they would come and they would bring food and they would bow down to them. But these are just fake. These are fake gods. And so Anne and Adoniram wanted them to worship the one true God and have a relationship with Jesus. And they also knew that things were really tough there with the rulers. While they were there, just a few months, there were these thieves that came and stole stuff from people's house, and the viceroy found out about it, and he took those men and he put them in the village square. He cut their insides open and left them there for everybody to see so that people would know, don't steal. Well, that was harsh. And so they knew that things were really bad there and really dangerous, and that people were scared. And so they didn't want people to live like that. They wanted to let people live courageously for God. Now, around this time, they got exciting news that a new family was actually coming to join them, the Hoffs, George and Phoebe Hoff, and they were going to be bringing a printing press, which was great because, like I said, the people in Burma didn't have Bibles. And so they decided that they were going to start printing out parts of the Bible once they got there with the printing press. I'm sorry, give me just a second. My elbow pits are very sweaty right now, and I just need to air them out. Just give me 1 second. Well, that's much better. Okay, so anyway, where was I? Printing press. So the printing press. Well, anyway, they also found out that they were going to be having a baby. And pretty soon that little tiny baby had arrived, and they named him Roger. And they were so excited to have this little baby boy, and everybody in town wanted to come and see Roger because, well, he was a little white baby, and they had never seen such a little white baby before. And so everybody wanted to see him and touch him, and they thought that he was so interesting looking. Well, remember how I said that this was a long time ago and they did not have the medicine that we have now. And so when people got sick, sometimes things didn't go very well for them. Well, when Roger was just a few months old, he got really sick. And then Roger died. And their hearts were so sad. That was their baby. This was really hard to be a missionary in another place where they didn't have any help. And so they cried out to God and they prayed and said, God, please help us. Give us strength to keep doing the work that you want us to do because our hearts are broken. And they asked God to help them, and he did. Now, when the Hoffs arrived soon after that, they helped them to set up the printing press. And the Hoffs had to start learning the language. And so they were learning the language, and Adoniram was busy translating the gospel. Excuse me. Okay, sorry about that. Now, the Hoffs, Adoniram was busy translating the Gospel of Matthew into the Burmese language. And then they planned on printing it out. Now, Anne had also done something really cool. She had started a school for girls. And in this school for girls, she was teaching the girls about God. And so they were all working, doing their parts as missionaries to tell as many people as they could about Jesus. Well, it was at that time that Adoniram said, okay, Anne, I'm going to leave you with the Hoffs for right now, and I'm going to go up to this other area of Burma where we heard that there's like 3 Christians there. And I want to go ask those Christians if they'll come back down to Rangoon, which is where Anne and Adoniram lived, and if they will come down here and they will help us in our efforts of sharing the gospel down here. Well, he set off on this voyage that was supposed to be 1 month. But as he left on the voyage, things started to go bad on the ship. And they got stuck out in the middle of the ocean, and they couldn't go any further up to this area that they were trying to get to. And so they started to run out of food, and then they started to run out of water, and then Adoniram got really sick, and he was going to the bathroom a lot, and it was not a pretty sight. But he was getting really sick, and at one point he thought, I think I might die on this ship, and I may never make it back to Anne. Well, he prayed and he asked God, please, God, help me to get better so that I can get back to Anne and we can keep doing the work that you brought us to Burma for. Well, after 7 months, it was supposed to be a 1-month trip, and after 7 months, he finally got back and he was feeling much better. God had helped him to feel better. Well, he got back, and Anne was obviously worried because he couldn't call and say, hey, by the way, I'm sick and dying on a ship and I don't know when we're going to be back. So she didn't know what was going on. And so he came back and she said, I'm so relieved that you're back and that you're okay. But things have not been good here in Rangoon. Cholera, a really bad sickness, came through, and a bunch of people got sick and died. And then the Hoffs, seeing all of this, said, we don't think we want to be missionaries here anymore. It's just too dangerous. And so the Hoffs decided to leave. And so then Anne said, so we're here by ourselves again. So many difficulties all at once. But they knew that they needed to continue on because they knew that the people of Burma had to know about Jesus. And thank you, Lord, after they prayed and prayed, another family came on a ship, the Colemans. And the Colemans came and helped Anne and Adoniram build a building called a zayat. Now, a zayat was a building that had a roof, and it was up above the ground, and it had no walls on the sides. And they started holding their church services here, and then they were having weary travelers come and sit down and eat some food in the zayat so they could tell them about Jesus. And at that time, there was a man named Mung Na. And Mung Na kept coming back every day to the zayat and kept asking more questions about Jesus until one day he said, I want to turn from my sins and put my trust in Jesus. And he was the very first Christian in that area in Burma. And Anne and Adoniram were so excited, kind of like the time that I was really excited because I thought that I was getting a pony. And then the pony came, and it was a little tiny pony. It turned out to be a toy pony, not a real pony that I could ride on, and I was really disappointed. But Jesus is never disappointing. Jesus is never disappointing. And they were so excited that this man had become a Christian. Now, Adoniram and Anne saw things changing in Rangoon. They started getting harassed by the leaders there, and the leaders were going to them and telling them, give us money. If you don't want us to bother you, give us your money. And Anne and Adoniram were having to give them their money so that they didn't have a lot left. And then they found out what was going on. The king of Burma died. And then his son took his place. Well, his son was an evil and ruthless man. And when the son took his place, he killed his entire family and all of the government officials in Burma because he wanted to make sure that nobody else took over him being king. He was a very bad man. And so people in Burma became even more afraid. And so the people there were concerned about going to the Zayat and going to the church services because they said, well, we don't want this king to find out that we're doing this because he's killing everybody and he really wants people to be Buddhist. And so if we come here, what if he kills us? But at that time, even though less people were coming to the Zayat, and even though fewer people wanted to talk to Adoniram and Anne, people still were becoming Christians. And Adoniram and Anne saw more and more and heard more stories of people that were turning to Jesus. But things were getting harder. And so Adoniram and Mr. Coleman decided that they were going to go to Ava, the capital of Burma, and they were going to have to see the king and see if maybe they could win favor with the king so that they could keep sharing the gospel with people. But this was going to be very dangerous because of what a ruthless man this king was. And so they knew that this could be life and death for them. Well, I don't have time to tell you any more of the story right now because I need to get back to my magnificent painting of Walton. So you're all going to have to leave and hear the rest of the story tomorrow. Goodbye.